We've got to talk about a rhino by the name of John Cornyn. And no, I don't mean the rhinos that walk on four legs. I mean the rhinos that we have in Washington, D.C. John Cornyn, out of the great state of Texas, he's currently trying to do his best impersonation of an America First Republican right now. So let's talk about it. Make sure you guys smack that like button and subscribe if you are new, and let's jump right on in.
President Trump's endorsement still. You want proof of just how powerful President Trump's endorsement still is among Republicans? Well, look no further than the 180 John Cornyn just did in the hopes of getting the support of President Trump. Senator Cornyn published an op-ed saying that he now supports changing the filibuster rules so that it would be easier to pass a bill that President Trump says is his top priority other than the war in Iran. Now, Cornyn has aggressively opposed changing the filibuster. He's an institutionalist. He's been in the Senate for a very long time, and he never wanted to change this until now. So why do changes in parliamentary rules in the Senate have anything to do with the president's endorsement in the Republican Senate runoff in Texas? The answer is because the president made it so. When I spoke with the president on Friday and asked whether he was going to endorse Senator Cornyn, as sources suggested he was leaning towards doing, over the Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, the president made clear that that endorsement is tied to John Cornyn's support for what the president calls the Save America Act. It's a piece of legislation that has to do with voting. So the question isn't whether or not Senator Cornyn supports the legislation, it's whether he supports changes that will allow that legislation to pass. And this is a big change for him. I spoke to one top Republican strategist who's working with Senator Cornyn, who told me, quote, "The survival instinct is a powerful one." That says it all. And you know what? It's not just that Senator Cornyn wrote what he wrote, it's where he wrote it. He wrote it in the New York Post. It's not exactly widely read in his home state of Texas, but you know where it is read? In the Oval Office that is currently occupied by a native New Yorker.
So yeah, you heard that. John Cornyn has done a 180 to try to get reelected in Texas over Ken Paxton. Goodness gracious, couldn't get that out there. Sheesh Louise. So yeah, John Cornyn and his fellow Republicans should change, or said his fellow Republicans. I can't talk today. My goodness. I apologize, guys. I apologize. Should change the Senate's filibuster rules and try to force through a voter ID bill that President Trump has called his #1 priority heading into the fall midterm elections. For many years, I believe that if the U.S. Senate scrapped the filibuster, Texas and our nation would stand to lose more than we would gain, Cornyn wrote, who is set to face Lone Star State Attorney General Ken Paxton in a hotly contested May 26th primary runoff in an op-ed published by The Post. But when the reality on the ground changes, leaders must take stock and adapt. Cornyn called for his colleagues to adopt whatever changes may prove necessary to pass legislation meant to secure America's elections, as well as a separate bill to reopen the Department of Homeland Security. One suggestion the Texan floated was a so-called talking filibuster in which senators are required to physically hold the floor to prevent votes on legislation. Currently, most bills are blocked from passage if they fail to gain 60 votes under the so-called cloture rule. Under the proposed talking filibuster rule, the legislation that is subject to the tactic could clear the Senate with just 51 votes once the floor is yielded. So yeah, so all in all, right now, it takes 60 votes to pass anything in the Senate. We only have 53 Republicans, so not enough votes. We need 7 Democrats on anything that we want to pass in the Senate. 7 Democrats have to vote with the Republicans. With the filibuster, that number drops to 50. All right, or 51, excuse me. A simple majority, 51. That's all you need. So yeah. That is what we're talking about here on that situation. But for those of you who aren't familiar with John Cornyn and his RINO ways, I want to play this video clip for you to illustrate how terrible this guy genuinely is. Check it out.
Senator John Cornyn turned his back on President Trump.
You've said that you think it's time for the Republican Party to move on from President Trump.
You know, in politics, unless you could win an election, you're pretty much irrelevant.
John Cornyn of Texas told CBS News he simply doesn't think Donald Trump can get elected president. Quite a statement from Senator Cornyn.
Cornyn told Fox 26 he won't be supporting former President Trump, and neither should other Republicans.
John Cornyn supports amnesty and says Texans should just deal with millions of illegal aliens.
The American people are a compassionate people, then I think they would find a way to deal with the 12 million people.
He even fought to stop President Trump's border wall.
New giant wall from sea to shining sea makes no sense whatsoever.
The idea of a wall is somewhat off-putting to a lot of people.
And when John Cornyn joined Joe Biden to take away our gun rights, President Trump sounded the alarm.
You know, there are some Republicans, including former President Trump, who are ripping this and ripping you as well.
John Cornyn has decided to take guns from lawful gun owners. And if there's one reason you vote Republican, it's to prevent that.
John Cornyn doesn't share our values. It's time for a change. Ken Paxton is the conservative fighter they couldn't cancel.
An attorney general who has really led the way, somebody who has been brave and strong, Ken Paxton.
Ken Paxton is America's most conservative attorney general. He sued Joe Biden over 100 times to stop his lawless agenda. As Attorney General, Ken Paxton protected our gun rights, defended the right to life, and took on the radical transgender movement to keep men out of women's sports, locker rooms, and bathrooms. A fearless conservative, he's taken on the establishment and held big tech and big pharma accountable. Now, Ken Paxton is running for Senate to stand with President Trump and help him make America great again. As our next senator, Ken Paxton will cut our taxes, defend our borders, and eliminate all the woke programs John Cornyn funded. Stand up for Texas. Fight for our future. Join the Ken Paxton for Senate team today.
So yeah, obviously that was a political ad in favor of Ken Paxton. Clearly, I'm sure you guys could catch that. But all in all, you know, it was true. John Cornyn is not a great individual, and he's only saying this. And you heard even CNN called him out, like, "Yo, this Trump endorsement is a powerful thing. The survival instinct is a miracle worker." But don't fall for it. Don't fall for it. I mean, this guy is not somebody that you want to support. And the polls are showing that it seems like no matter what, John Cornyn is in a whole lot of trouble because, check it out. As you guys can see here on your screen, let me make that a little bit bigger. In a straight up race where there's no endorsement whatsoever in a runoff, I believe the runoff is May 26th, if I remember correctly. It's projected that Ken Paxton will win 49-41, right? I mean, there's 11% that aren't sure. But right now, Ken Paxton has a lead. Now, if Trump endorses Paxton, well, that becomes a blowout. That becomes an easy W for Ken Paxton. But on the flip side, if Trump endorses Cornyn, it looks like for the first time, Republican voters, we the people, will vote against Uncle Trump's wishes. And Ken Paxton barely squeaks it out in the end. Now, of course, these are just polls, okay? These are just polls. These aren't actual people going out to vote quite yet. Obviously, that can change. Ken Paxton technically did lose in the primary to John Cornyn via, I mean, granted, it was only by 1.2%, right? I believe it was literally like 1.2%, like barely, just a touch over 1%. Ken Paxton lost by. But when you consider the backdrop, which the backdrop is there was over $70 million spent on Ken Paxton and like $5 million spent, there was over $70 million spent on John Cornyn and only like $5 million spent on Ken Paxton. So when you consider that, to only lose by one when your opponent is spending nearly $100 million, I think it says a lot. It says a lot. I want to read this though. Don't let RINOs fool you. There's a unmistakable stench of betrayal in the air. John Thune and the RINO crew are plotting behind closed doors to kneecap Ken Paxton. They must protect Cornyn's Senate seat and keep the swamp firmly in control. The Save America Act is the most important bill the U.S. Senate could ever pass. Cornyn is a hard no on it and the talking filibuster. That really says it all, doesn't it? Leader John Thune has stonewalled the SAFE Act for months, ignoring Scott Presler's warnings and the MAGA's base. Now he's dangling carrots to bribe Trump into sidelining our fighter Ken Paxton. Don't fall for it. Paxton's the true America First warrior. He battled election fraud in 2020, stood rock solid with Trump. Paxton is calling Thune's bluff, says he'll only step aside if they nuke the filibuster and pass the SAVE Act and lock down our borders and elections. That's the only way that I would even come close to accepting, John Cornyn, not John Thune, John Cornyn being reelected. If the filibuster is nuked and the SAVE Act is passed before May, whatever that date was, May 26th or May, when is that runoff? It's May something. Anyway, but before the May runoff, if they manage to pass the SAVE Act, okay, John Cornyn, you can stay, but this is it. This is it. There's no more dangling stuff over our heads to try to get the RINOs reelected. This is the one and only time that you guys are going to be able to do this. And why do I say that? Because we will be able to get more Republicans into office with the SAVE Act, in my assumption, in my belief. And so with more America First Republicans, the RINOs' power really diminishes. Okay? And so in the future, we can just vote them out or just let a Democrat take their place just to, stick it to them, which obviously that's not something that you want to do. But if you have to prove a point, if we've already got a majority, right? A comfortable majority, letting John Thune lose to a Democrat won't be that bad, right? Because it's like, well, if you've got, 55 Republicans to Democrats, whatever, right? 40 something, one less Republican, that's a RINO at that, won't really make a whole lot of a difference. So that's why I would be willing to say yes on keeping John Cornyn if they pass the Save America Act. Save America Act, not the SAVE Act. Save America Act. So anyway, y'all get in the comments. Let me know your thoughts and your opinions. Will you be voting for John Cornyn or Ken Paxton? Let me know.